gating is not a bad thing. At the end of the day, you need to know what to gate and what not to, and more importantly, have a clear workflow of what do you do with the gated information that you get. Okay, so for instance, let's say you're running a webinar series, and a lot of people register to there. You can gate it because you want people to be live and come in and have a conversation. So you want people to register for that. That's great, but immediately after the first webinar, if you're going to send out emails promoting a product, sign up, blah blah blah, you're not going to have enough people turning up for the next webinar. They're going to know that, hey, the moment I come in here, this is not going to work out because we are getting into their marketing ecosystem.
The world of marketing is changing, and to keep pace with it, you need to create a new point of view that is original, authentic, and engaging. How to go about doing that? Stay tuned to the Marketing Redefined show.
Hi, Yaag. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been super fun, and thank you for having me on your show.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to this conversation given your a diverse background in many spheres as I've gone through your podcast. But as we start, Yaag, a quick background to your journey and who you have been to this point.
Sure. So I've been a marketer. I started my career in sales way back in 2008. And for the first 2-3 years of my work life, I've been a BDR, then slowly moved towards the sales side of the world. And at some point, I realized that I was more interested in the marketing side of things. And around 2011, 2012, I joined a company called SolarWinds, which was Texas based, and I was working remote. So working remote has been, part of my life ever since 2011 October-ish. So I've been doing that on and off. And from there, I got into the world of product marketing, then into the world of content marketing. And then being a typical startup person, I've done pretty much everything from content to demand gen to little bit of PR to demoing to everything that a typical startup person would do. And that is why, it excites me to be in the world of startups. And on the way, I had an opportunity to write a few books and start my own podcast. Like, I love to experiment. So let's, I like to see where things go and how things work. And through that, through books and through podcasts, I also got the opportunity to connect with different kinds of people and learn from all these people. I had the privy to talk to people like Seth Godin, Guy Kawasaki, so on and so forth. So it's been a fantastic journey overall, lots of learnings and lots of mistakes on the way as well, which is again, in the form of learnings.
Absolutely. So were you always in B2B sphere?
Yes, all my life I've been in B2B. I've never gone on the venture on the B2C side, except for, if you can call books to be part of that.
And in the technology B2B sphere, or was it split?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had
always
a fairly...
technology. Yeah, software focused. And then over the last 7-8 years has been very SaaS focused.
Yeah. And you were quite early in the podcast game as well, right? So when did you get started?
So I wouldn't say I was one of the early people. I started this in 2019 December, and just before the world broke loose with COVID. So that's when I started. I can say relatively earlier than most people, but then there were hegemons in this world who had been doing this for like 10 years even then. But the lucky thing is when I started, the technology was already there. You could just jump in and get any of these Zencasters and Riversides and then quickly get things recorded and edited. So things have been much easier now.
Yeah, and I know somebody was remarking that in the COVID time, it almost became mandatory that, right? It's like you have a Facebook account, then you also have a podcast or somewhere running.
Yeah.
So, Yaag, our topic today is about content marketing, right? And it's obviously been there since decades, and it has multiple definitions.
Right.
How would you define it? What is it, and what is it not?
Well, content, in my view, is part of every marketer's life, whether they like it or not. So, even whether you're a product marketer or whether you are a demand gen person or whether you're a performance marketing person who runs ads, you have to have some exposure to content. But what is content? It's more about the way somebody consumes information about your product or what you do, or even a solution to the problem of what they're looking for. For instance, if I'm looking for something, I'll go and I'll Google something. And if I find an answer to that, now it is not confined to just the written word.
Mm.
It can be blogs, it can be product pages. At the same time, it can be videos, it can be podcasts like this. At the end of the day, wherever I get the information to do something that I want to, happens always through content.
Mm.
Some ways I would even argue that even sales is delivery of content in some way or the other, to make sure that the other person understands things the way we want them to. And the advantage, however, there is that it's a lot more two-way than the written word.
Mm.
So yeah, that's my view of it. What it is not, it is not just about you trying to promote yourself all the time. It is about trying to understand. One of the fundamental things that we at Avoma internally always talk about is, we say that, hey, are we writing this for the sake of us promoting something, or are we writing this because it is genuinely useful for somebody who's going to read it? Or is it like, is this something that this person is looking for? When you randomly search for something on the website or on Google, you're going to get, like, you will always see the same 5 or 6 people in the top 10 searches. And sometimes the funny thing is that though it sounds exactly similar to what you were searching for, the content inside that has nothing to do with what you're looking for.
Mm.
So is it answering my question? Or sometimes you fundamentally go back and ask that, who is it for? Okay, why does this matter to them? What gives us the authority to write on this topic? Right. So am I writing just because there is a lot of search volume on this topic, and then I want to rank and I want to drive traffic? While that is there, it's a part. But most importantly, am I trustworthy enough? If I'm going to talk about conversation intelligence in my blog, or revenue intelligence in my blog, or meeting assistant, any of those topics, I have the authority because we have that base. We have been in this business for quite a while, and we have had experiences of talking to customers, so on and so forth. But suddenly, if I'm beginning to talk about marketing automation software or
Mm.
CRMs, you know it's at that point you need to have, it's not that we cannot write about it at all, but that's when you think about formats. You think that, okay, can I interview somebody on this topic who is an authority and get that information which is far more authentic? Or can I even get a byline of somebody? It can be anything, but at the base of everything is authenticity and making sure that it is useful to people one way or the other.
Right. And so something which you mentioned there, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that, is demand gen,
Yeah.
right? Especially coming from a B2B SaaS tech BDR kind of a sphere.
Yeah.
Where do you put demand gen in this whole landscape?
So demand gen is, it depends. So here's my very specific thought process about demand gen. Generally, what people think when they think of content is that they think there needs to be a set of content pieces that is top of
Mm.
the funnel, set of pieces for middle funnel and bottom funnel. That to me is a very old school mindset. And to me, demand gen is somewhere part of all of these things, but it depends how, right? So, for instance, if I'm thinking, hey, this is top funnel content, I need to write a topic like, say, what is conversation intelligence or what is CRM? That kind of a glossary type topic or a very SEO specific topic. Now, to me, that's not the right way to approach, because I think that you're going by the assumption that somebody is going to consume 10 different pieces of content or 12 different pieces of content before going on to engage with you. But
Mm.
where is the time? People are looking for quick answers, right? So at the end of the day, you get a few seconds for people to establish trust with you and for you to establish trust with them. So how can you do that? So for example, how I go about writing certain topics is that I go back and because we have our own product as a base, so it helps me go back and listen to a lot of customer conversations.
Mm.
So what I mean by that, um, I listen to the prospect conversations with our AEs and the sales team, and I also listen to customer conversations with our CS team. So when I listen to both of these things, I get a sense of the kind of questions that these people ask. And then when I go back to the dashboard, I'm able to see, hey, what is the most used CRM by these people in the last 30 days in the calls? Like, what did they mention the most? Or what is the conferencing tool that they use the most? So when I have some context about all these things and the questions that these guys ask, now I can start creating pieces of content that is more relevant to my audience. It's not my assumption that, hey, I'm competing with these people. No, I'm going by real time information as to who these people say they are, comparing us to, or what are the things that they are using. And then using these aspects to create content topics. And then mapping it back to your search volume using a SEMrush or Hrefs, and then trying to optimize it further, and then you leveraging the help of say performance marketing and your other demand gen teams to put this through, and facilitating this. And even in the content, instead of writing it only for one part of the funnel, you can make it as one piece which covers a bit of all. So what I mean by that, if I'm talking about how to do XYZ, I'll give you an example. There was one person who was talking to our AE, and he was asking this question that, hey, there is something called filler words in your, in your product, where it says how many filler words did I use per minute, or through the entire conversation. Now, his question was, that information is great, but how do I know whether if I use filler words, will I end up losing the deal? Or does it have an impact on me winning or losing a deal? And to me, that's a great question. We don't have an answer to that. And we have not written about it anywhere. We have not described it in any of our product pages. And then I also went back and looked at the search volume for that. It was about 6,000 or something like that per month, and in US alone. And then I realized that, okay, there is a lot of potential. Let me go back and do some research. We have access to millions of calls. Let me go back and see what is the pattern out there. And I realized that there were three things that really came out. One, which said that just because you're using filler words doesn't mean that you're going to win or lose a deal. It does not have a direct impact that way. But it also came out that if you're using say 70% filler words for every 100 words that you speak, you're delivering a bad experience because you come across as you're someone who is not prepared, or you're nervous, or you're not sure of what you're saying. And the third part, the most interesting part for me, is that if you're 100% flawless, if you're not using any filler words at all, it still comes across as way too rehearsed, way too practiced, and it doesn't feel authentic. And then we saw that somebody who is using 1 to 2% filler words for every 100 words that they speak, that resonated with people most. So that became a recommendation piece. And this study became a beautiful blog post, which is one of the best performances for us. Similarly, I'll give you another demand gen example. One of our biggest competitors in the market is a company called Gong. Okay. A lot of us, when I started out at Avoma in 2021 April, one of the interesting things that I noticed was, back then not many people knew Avoma. And what happened was, people knew Gong. Gong is the market leader, and though we are the next most preferred solution, and we have our own point of view, we are very honest about ourselves as to where we stand. We cannot kid ourselves by saying that, hey, we cannot live in a bubble saying that we are the best. Yeah, we are best in what we do. We have a different point of view than them, but our point of view will be known to people only when people first know who we are, that we exist. And in that story, when a lot of people were coming to us and buying from us, I realized that, hey, people were comparing uh, Gong, and then back then there was also another company called Chorus. They too were competing against each other very heavily. Chorus later got acquired by Zoom Info. And so in that journey, what I realized was, when they were comparing these two, they eventually also landed upon Avoma. And they realized that, hey, out of these two, Avoma has a lot more features, end-to-end meeting lifecycle stuff. And then when they came to us, things started converting better with us. But we thought, okay, how do we lead more people? Why are we being the third, and where people are discovering us later? Why can't we start the journey from people knowing who we are? So we realized that, okay, let's go and write an article, because people who are buying Gong are comparing Chorus. People who are buying Chorus are also comparing Gong. Let's write an article about Gong versus Chorus. The traditional mindset of, the reason I'm sharing the story is that it's a proper demand gen story, wherein, you would think, if I'm going to write this article, I would write Gong versus Chorus versus Avoma. We didn't do that. Okay. We didn't do that because the moment we do that, and you're seeing that this is in Avoma.com's domain, naturally, even before reading, however objective I am, even before reading, you're going to have this mindset that, all right, these guys are eventually going to one up over these two and say that these guys are better. So we did not want to do that. We wanted to be genuinely helpful and saying that, hey, this is what Gong is all about. This is what Chorus is all about. They both are great in what they do. They are almost like very similar as well. And this is why Gong positions themselves as revenue intelligence. This is why Chorus positions themselves as conversation intelligence. This is how they stand against each other. And 80 to 85% of the blog was purely about them. There were certain areas towards the end where we said, all right, all of these is great, but there are certain things that these both are missing. And this is what they are missing. And just shared a couple of screenshots there to say that this is how it helps you in the journey. I did not even say that this is what Avoma does. Said this is what they're missing, and screenshots of Avoma here and there. And towards the end, I said that, hey, if you want X, Y, and Z, you go for Gong. If you want ABC, you go for Chorus. But if you want this and that, then you consider Avoma, take it for a spin. And the best part is, you don't have to talk to a salesperson like the other two companies. Here, it's product led, so you can jump in, take a spin for yourself. If you like it, talk to us. So this demand gen can happen the moment you understand your context of where you are. And this one particular blog post has driven us lots of high quality, demand generated. I don't like to use the word leads, but more like genuine interest. And the best thing that people say is that because we are product led there, after reading it, people can immediately go and try. And instead of somebody waiting for a week and then you getting say band qualified by an SDR, and then further you go through an AE after a couple of weeks of after a lot of qualification questions, and eventually you get to see the product only in the second week. Whereas with Avoma, it was always like, I could right now experience the product right away. By the time somebody else, I'm evaluating that, I've already used the product and I've set myself up in motion. There is an, we call it product led and sales assisted, which means like it's product led, but which means like, imagine you walking into a departmental store or a supermarket. You don't want somebody breathing behind your neck all the time. But yet, when you are going and trying to find something and you don't find it, there, you want somebody in the corner of your eye to, look at you and say, okay, what are you looking for? So let me help you. So that experience combined with the demand gen and content is where the magic is created.
Right. So before we move on to the core topic of creating a content marketing strategy, there's something which you mentioned, Yaag, which was the key. I mean, demand gen has been associated quite a lot with leads, right?
Yeah.
So MQLs or SQLs. So
Yeah.
that, in fact, many companies, if you start creating a strategy for demand gen, that is the final outcome.
Yeah.
How much do you agree with that? Do you think it's narrow in scope? Do you think it should be broadened? And how should somebody look at it in the long term?
Right. So I would put it this way, there is demand gen and demand capture are not the same. Okay. So for me, if you're trying to, how do I put it? Say, if you're trying to reach out to multiple people on LinkedIn and spam them, and you are trying to pitch slap people every now and then, that is not demand gen. That is pure spam. And then there is the other aspect where, even from an SEO aspect, if you think that there are so many searches for this one, and let me do X, Y, and Z and create landing pages or run ads and capture demand. That is demand capture because you know that there is a certain amount of search volume and there are a certain number of players. And it's a game of math saying that if I can get in front of these people, I can convert some percentage out of it. That's capture. But what I feel is that demand gen is even more broader than that, wherein you are here to create a point of view and say that this is what you stand for, this is how you go about it today. Which is, by what I mean is that you want to do demand capture as well as demand gen. They both go hand in hand. It's not one versus the other. You need to have you need to be capturing the demand that you have currently, but also generate demand for the future based on your point of view. A simple example would be something like you go to a TechCrunch or G2 or any of these public facing forums,
Mm.
and you randomly read 4 or 5 lines somewhere in the middle, and if you're able to identify that, hey, this point of view sounds very similar to the point of view of Avoma, then you have generated demand. You have arrived. At the end of the day, people know that this is what you stand for. That to me is generating demand, because once you start to stand for something and you establish your point of view consistently over a long period of time, then even those who are not in the market for your product today, but tomorrow when they are trying to look out for, or maybe this person joins a new organization and they are trying to buy a software for X, Y, and Z, they're going to realize that, okay, I've seen these guys, and these guys make a lot of sense, and they're very upfront, straightforward, and this is what they're all about. Then they come forward and they register a demo. Sometimes a podcast like this can be a significant part of demand gen. you know there are so many times where I've
Yeah.
picked up books, or I've tried out software just because there was an interesting conversation where this person said how this particular product helped me solve something. And here's where the magic is, right? So I'll also tie this slightly to the podcast advertising aspect of demand gen. Okay, so what happens is, because parallelly, I'm also doing some research on the podcast advertising side. And
Mm.
here's the funny aspect, right? So the moment somebody realizes that there is an ad, be it a pre-roll or a mid-roll or a post-roll, I'm going to switch my mind off. If I can skip it in the beginning or at the end, I will do that. Every podcast app allows you to do that. But if it's in the middle and I realize that it's an ad, my mind mentally is zoning out for those few seconds, 60 seconds or 30 seconds, and I'll come back when the conversation is. Instead, if you can package it as part of the conversation,
Mm.
sometimes I wonder, why are people not sponsoring questions and conversations, and why are they sponsoring ads?
Yeah.
When you think of those things, that's how you design your demand generation, by putting in a point of view and having a focused discussion. Because imagine this, somebody is here to listen to this 30-minute conversation, and they are going to get something out of it. Now it's on the host as well as on the guest to make sure that they deliver value and make sure that they make it worthwhile for the people to listen. And there is something to be taken away from that. Now, in that time, if you can communicate something very effectively in a way that is useful to the user, and also talk about your product or service, and the way I give you the example of, in content, how did I use this filler words concept, and how did I do this? It's a story. I'm not telling you that, hey, buy this feature, this is awesome, this is great, this is good. I'm just telling you a story of how something happened. That to me is demand generation.
So moving on to I think the key theme today is that this is December, we are mid-December, and most companies are looking to 2023.
Yeah.
Now, keeping in mind all that you said, from demand capture to demand gen to demand creation and all the different dimensions,
Yeah.
how should one set about creating a new content marketing strategy for 2023? What are the key steps that they should outline right now?
Right. So, see, as you know, the market conditions right now, it's like, not many people are trying to consolidate. People are trying to see, hey, do I, especially given the economic downturn across the US and also parts of India, as we are seeing.
Yep.
And 2023, I believe that people are still going to be relatively conservative. This is the place where you try to understand what is really important for people. Why does something matter? For instance, one of the things that we at Avoma are very excited about is, because Avoma is all-in-one solution. We try to say that, hey, instead of you buying 10 different solutions, you can invest on one which manages your workflow end to end, something like that. So you identify themes that are going to resonate with people in 2023. More importantly, what I would say is that, this might sound not so regular, but I would say that never have plans more than a quarter. We have all seen COVID. You had
Mm.
big plans for running events, and everything turned upside down in a short span. So I would say, plan for a quarter, and then have themes for a quarter, and in that, take short bets, saying that, hey, in this quarter I'm going to go after this specific kind of an audience with this kind of a messaging, and have plans as to what are the different ways you're going to reach out to them. How is content going to help there? who are the people that you need to take leverage of to deliver this? For example, if this is a theme, are you closely connected to the product, and do you know what is coming up in the product side of the world in the next 1 quarter? If that's the case, then okay, what is product marketing planning around this? Now, once that's there, from there, how does it translate to your content? What are the blog themes that you're going? What are the playbooks that you're going to build, or what are the kind of podcasts? Who are the kind of guests? And then you think about what are the places that I need to really hang out, and then you go down further and chalk out the details as to, okay, are there going to be ebooks? Are there going to be this? So how it is something that you can derive later, but I would say starting point, it's just about 100% clarity on what's going to happen in the first quarter, and then take short bets and have clear themes. And there are things that will definitely fail. When you do 10 things, there are going to be three or four things that will not work out.
Mm.
So that's why, taking there needs to be some big bets, there needs to be some small bets, and then let's see what goes from there. But the best part is be open to be iterative. It's not that you do once and immediately you think, let's knock it off because it's not working. Give it some time. Probably, give it some time in the sense that wait for a month and see how it's impacting. Did it contribute to revenue? And you can go back and look at certain aspects. For instance, one of the first things that we do in every sales call at Avoma is we ask, every salesperson asks this question: how did you get to know us? And the answer might be anywhere from we read your blog, we heard you on a podcast, or we saw your ad, or somebody recommended us, any of these things. And these things, because there is a software that's capturing this, I can go back and look at the last 30 days and see which was the channel that worked the best. And then you can move channels based on that. So when I say move channels, sometimes, if there is a certain channel that is not really, really working well for you, you've seen that over like 2 months or so, then you can move the budget from that to a newer bet that you want to take, so that there is no big new budget that has to come in. You're just making the most out of something. And lastly, what I would like to leave with in this aspect is that never look at something like, say, don't plan it that I'll do this in the next quarter. It's like, if there is something that you have as a theme for a quarter, plan to execute it in months. And then if you have certain plans for months, accelerate it and try to execute it in weeks. And work in sprints. When you work in a sprint and operate on an iterative model, you know quickly what is working, what is not.
Perfect. So a lot to capture there. A few things I'll just re-articulate and move over, which is one thing we said was quarter at a time, right?
Yeah.
So not too much. The world is changing too fast.
Yeah.
Do it quarter at a time. Another thing you said was diversify between some big bets and some small bets.
Yes.
Which obviously will be iterative in nature.
Yeah.
Work in sprints and also look at where people are hanging out so that you can tailor it.
Yeah.
But 2 points which you mentioned, one was the initial point, which is identify the themes.
Yeah.
And another point which you sort of mentioned is the sort of people who would be required to make this thing a success.
Yeah.
So there is the identification of the themes plus the team structure which you should have.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on those? The first part is, how does one identify the themes?
Right.
So you have an advantage, right? With your business model, with your software, you can listen to conversations. You are in that domain,
right,
where you are privy to what people are saying.
Yeah.
But for a regular tech B2B SaaS startup, how do they set about identifying the themes for the first quarter 23?
Right. So themes need not always come from a product. See, if you're, I'll put it this way, there is process, people, process, and then tools. Is how I would put it. So first you need to identify where you're going, and that comes from you having your ears to the ground. There is like so much is available so freely on the internet today. You go on LinkedIn, how many people are talking about layoffs, how many people are talking about several things, how many people are talking about consolidation. So given where the direction is and your ears to the ground, you get a sense of where it is. And as a founder, you're always going to be talking to multiple people, and you are going to get information from multiple sources. So as a discussion, you are going to get consolidated information as to what is the direction that you want to go in this quarter. And once that happens, that needs to be rallied around to the entire organization to say that, okay, this is where we are headed, and this is what we are going to achieve at the end of this quarter. Now from there, you say that, okay, what is content going to do, what is product going to do, what is product marketing going to do, so on and so forth. And once that alignment happens, it you need to at least have the connections at the cross functional level. See, one of the key lessons that I've learned over the last 13 years or so is that you're never going to be successful by being an expert only in your domain or
Mm.
your function. If you don't have that cross functional relationship, and if you don't have a proper understanding of how one feeds into the other, that cross functional collaboration has to happen. If it doesn't happen, nothing is going to ever work out. It's like, people pulling the car on both sides and the car stands in the same place.
Mm.
That's not how it should be. So once that happens, then you come into a process saying that, okay, right now this is the focus for content. How do I create a workflow? There are people who are working on blogs, there are people who are working on product related pages, there are people who are running campaigns. Now, who feeds into what? And that's when you lay out a plan for this month, and you're going to put down dates saying that these are the dates where these should be out. But from there you go back. So I always love working bottom up in those aspects. For example, think of it like a product launch, for instance, right? You're going to say that this day is going to be the product launch, wherein I'm going to do a product hunt, I'm going to do a press release, I'm going to do 10 different things. Now once you have those 10 things to go out in a period, you start working out as, okay, for this to happen, what do I need? I need screenshots, I need a blog post, I need this content, I need that content. That list then goes back, okay, if this has to be ready by this date and approved, then when has this to be produced, and when has this to be reviewed, and what is the flow for that? So you go back and date those things, and then things begin to fall in place. So it's like, you start as to where you are, and then put a plan around it, commit to it, come what may. And more importantly, it's also that, don't aim too low. Sometimes it's very easy to say that under promise and over deliver.
Mm.
We as an organization believe the opposite, where we say that, hey, it's okay to overpromise, challenge yourself, and like, instead of saying that I'll do 5 things and doing 7 and saying, hey, we did a great job, let's say we'll do 10, and you end up doing 8, that's still fine. You did better than what you originally would have. So those are few fundamentals that I like to look
Right. And in terms of the key people in
at.
this content team,
Yeah.
who are those key roles?
Right. So there needs to be somebody who heads the content at a strategic level, saying
Mm.
that if this is the direction, these are the kind of things that we need to be doing. And then that strategic direction has to come in terms of identifying the themes, identifying the topics, or identifying, the keywords, whatever it is. So you come at a strategy level and you say that, these are the things that we are going to do. These are the kind of bets that we are going to take, which directly ties back to the larger goal that we have as an organization. From there, you're going to have your content creators, and depending on the size of the team. For example, at Avoma, the content team is just 2 people, me and one more person. Okay. So we do everything between us, from planning to writing content to distributing content to everything. And so, depending on the size of your organization and the scale at which you're operating, sometimes it's also helpful to outsource certain aspects. But there are certain aspects that I would never outsource as well. So what I mean is that I can outsource design and creatives in certain parts of it, but I would never outsource the core content piece.
Mm.
And here's why. I mean, there are a lot of content agencies which do a great job. No two things about it. But the difference is, unless you can give an ultra clear information to them, that, hey, this is exactly what you need to deliver. This is who we are. This is our tone. Otherwise, it's going to be like they're going to look at 10 different pieces that's available online, and they're going to mix and match and give you something. Today, maybe Chat GPT-3 would do a better job than that.
Mm.
Okay. So the point is, this is where you having a point of view and understanding who you are, the tonality, which maps back to what I said, that when I read those 4 lines randomly, I need to know that this is Avoma's tone, this is Avoma's point of view. That's when you stand. So There needs to be a creative team or an outsourced team. There needs to be definitely, you need to spend way more time in distribution and promotion as well. This is one area that I'm personally trying to improve. Uh, the thing is, many a times we spend a lot of time in creating
Yep.
something, and then it dies somewhere deep within. Nobody looks at it. If you're not spending that amount of time in distributing or promoting it, and by promotion, it's not just randomly pasting links everywhere. It's about using it, repurposing it in a very different manner. For example, from this conversation, there can be multiple snippets. It can go into a blog post. It can be a few key stats that comes out of this conversation, so on and so forth, and use it in different places. And ultimately, the way you use social media for this is, the traditional mindset would be, from here I want them to take back to my website, and then from there take them through a funnel. Instead of that, it's far more open. At the end of the day, if people are consuming information here, let's keep information right here. Let's make it easy. You don't want them to keep clicking. You want to satiate their hunger right now, and if you establish trust enough, they will come to you. And then today we have the scope of engaging as an individual, engaging as an organization, so on and so forth. I'm digressing, but overall, in content, the way I look at it is, the key people are the strategist and the content writer and the promoter. And then it's also about your immediate collaboration with your performance marketing and the demand gen team as well.
Mm. No, so a few things which you mentioned, Yag. One of them is that there was this tendency to outsource every part of content, which is where we came to this, right? So you give SEO agency, you give five
Yeah,
keywords, and they
yeah,
keep on repeating
yeah,
those five keywords. And
yeah,
for some time, it did work with Google.
yeah,
Eventually, it didn't. The other major thing which has happened is that gated content has started losing its relevancy.
mm,
The more open you are, the more eager you are to share your value, what you've learned with people, the easier it is to gain their trust. The market is simply too saturated for you to brute force your way into
yeah,
somebody's house and make them pay
yeah,
you something.
yeah,
But something at the end which you mentioned was, you need to have a good collaboration with your performance marketing team,
yeah.
which brings us to the point of, how do you measure the outcome, and what is the best way to measure the outcome of this quarter's content marketing strategy?
Right. So I'll again also go back, because this also ties to the gating aspect. I would say gating is not a bad thing.
Mm,
At the end of the day, you need to know what to gate and what not to, and more importantly, have a clear workflow of what do you do with the gated information that you get. Okay. So for instance, let's say you're running a webinar series, and a lot of people register to there. You can get it because you want people to be live and come in and have a conversation. So you want people to register for that. That's great. But immediately after the first webinar, if you're going to send out emails promoting a product, sign up, blah blah blah, you're not going to have enough people turning up for the next webinar. They're going to know that, hey, the moment I come in here, this is not going to work out, because we are getting into their marketing ecosystem. That's not what you want. So, how to measure is that once you have clarity on this flow, then the measurement is more to me about knowing which sources. Many a times, there are people look at enrichment, people look at multiple aspects, attribution software, and all of that. But if you are a startup and if you have very minimal things for now, the best way to start is asking your inbound audience a very simple question as to, where do you, how did you come to us?
mm,
Where did you find us? What is the source? And that is a great starting point. Once you understand that this is what is working, because when I joined Avoma, I was working as a one-person marketing team for a long time, for more than a year. Okay, so at that point, one of the first things my CEO back then told me is that, hey, let's not worry about attribution. For now, let's worry about are we really delivering value and doing good things that helps us gain trust with people. That is ultimately what it's all about. Some attribution needs to happen. I'm not saying it shouldn't, but if you're starting out, don't worry too much about attribution. Attribution can come, but first, let's broaden our scope and broaden our area of interest and get people to come in, and let things start to work. And by time, you will also have a hunch of, this is what is working, this is what is not working. And then you have this example of asking them, where did you find me? over a period of time, you also start putting out certain attribution softwares like factors, or any of these softwares that are available, and try to understand, okay, which source is actually giving me a more demand. Are we getting more people at a dashboard level? If you can see that I'm getting 50% from organic, 20% from say paid, or 10% from social media. And within that, you zoom down and understand, all right, so in social media, is it coming out because of the engaging posts that we are put in and the demand generated, or is it from the social media ads that we are running? So you zoom in as you go later, but start with, I would say, let's keep it very simple, and then expand as your team expands.
Interesting. So, just tied up with that question about measuring outcome and at which stage do you start measuring outcome is also the part of allocating a budget.
Right.
So, how do you decide upon that?
So I would say at what point you would start measuring is, if I have to give a stage, I would roughly say somewhere around Series A, a company typically needs to start becoming more measured. If it's an invested company, or in terms of revenue, I would say once you cross that 1 million threshold, it becomes more sensible for you to measure. Because see, the simple point of starting measurement is, do you have enough data to go back and understand
Mhm.
where these things came from? That's the logic that I'm trying to get at. Because if you're trying to optimize for this from day one, it's not going to happen. You have to have significant amount of data and significant amount of customers first, and then you go back and see, okay, this worked, this didn't work. Maybe, okay, based on my understanding, seems like this is the top one. Let me bet more on it and go deeper for a quarter or two, and then see if this is working. Now, once your hunch becomes stronger, then you start applying software, and you have a process saying that this is the workflow. Then this is the software that makes it easier. First, chalk it out on an Excel sheet or a Google spreadsheet, and say that this is going to be the flow. Draw, there are so many whiteboard softwares available. Draw a flow and then put it on a sheet, and then understand that manually this is how we are going to do this. And then put people saying that, hey, these are the people who will measure these specific aspects and tie it this way. And once you have a strong understanding of this, then you can look at what are the softwares that can automate this. Because if you don't have a solution to the problem in your head first, software is not going to help you.
Right. So, you mentioned something about a stage in which a company is, right? So,
Yeah.
it's $1 million above, and which is a fair point. Unless you have enough data points,
Yeah.
you don't really know what you're measuring, and a small spike somewhere could lead you in a S3 direction.
Yeah.
But there are many people who are working in, right, as a team, and they have to sell this idea of creating a new content strategy to the management.
Yeah.
Right. And the immediate question which usually comes is, what is the ROI?
Yeah.
Right? What are you expecting?
Yeah.
Now, in this manner, and this is also, I think, why putting demand gen equal to lead capture it came into popularity, because it was very easy to measure the cost per lead.
Yeah.
So they already knew what it was, and it will say, okay, with this method, we'll get the cost down to this much.
Yeah.
Now, whether it eventually converted into revenue or not, that was another part.
Yeah.
But for people who are working in a team, and let's say they have to convince their management that we should invest in a content strategy for the first quarter,
Mhm.
and we need this much of budget. And the usual question is, what is the ROI you're expecting?
Mhm.
How would a startup deal with these questions?
See, my question my answer might be a little disappointing here. I would say that, first of all, there is no point working in a place where the founder doesn't understand this logic. Okay, or he or she, either they have to understand on their own, or they should be open enough to to this fact.
Hmm.
See, at the end of the day, you can run demand gen campaigns all the time, and say that this is how it's going to work, and then you if you equate these two, yes, you will get a certain number. It's very, if at the end of the day, if that's what all they want, you can still give them that. But the problem is, over a period of time, they are still going to come back and realize that, hey, you gave me all these different leads, and then if I assign potential revenue number for every opportunity created, and say that, hey, x number of opportunities into this minimum dollarized value, and this is the total pipeline that I've created for this period, and then only 5% of that ends up converting, easily people are going to come back and say, okay, can you identify who this 5% is, and can we get more of this? Now, you are actually opening out a funnel by running these ads, and you don't have a very specific method of exactly capturing those 5% people.
Mm.
That is where, you go back and realize that, hey, why did this convert? Because this messaging resonated. Why does this message resonate? Because it was targeting a specific problem. Who's this problem for these specific people? And how do we gain trust with them? You do that with your content. So you again go back to that. So if you can give this story to people and work out this bottom up and give these two scenarios and then let people to decide, I think, sometimes it's best to put out the right information and allow the people to take a decision. But the key thing is that if you're a smart marketer, it's on us to make those solid recommendations and come from a fact checking standpoint and say that, yeah, we can be aspirational, which is fantastic, we should, but at the same time we should have a realistic way of getting there.
Absolutely. So I think which is a fair point, right? As a marketer, it falls to anybody who's listening to this that it's also their responsibility
Yeah.
to be able to articulate their vision.
Yeah.
And articulation need not always be in terms of 10x ROAS or 10x
Yeah.
ROI. Right? There's a vision, and which is probably why you were mentioning that the content strategy person needs to be in house.
Yeah.
Because in some manner he's the one who's driving this sort of a roadmap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So
And
as
the strategy person should understand. Here's another key point that I'd make: the strategy person who is working on the content, he or she also needs to understand lot many things outside of content as well. They have to have a proper vision of what's happening across the company, where are we headed, and the ability to translate those things into content. Think of them as a business analyst. You're converting a business requirement into a technical requirement. It's of that sort. You have to be able to map that into this and arrive at that. So that skill becomes very important. That's why I keep mapping back to the vision understanding and the cross functional abilities.
Yeah, yeah. So, as we move towards the final part of this podcast, Yaag, what trends do you foresee? So you mentioned something about ChatGPT, which is basically taken everywhere by storm. But apart from that, what do you see in 2023 happening, which most people may not be aware of?
So generally, I'm not a fan of trends per se, because when you look back at majority of the trends that come up, it always tries to push a message. It tries to push a message saying that, hey, in 2023 more people will be spending on content marketing. We all know that it's been happening for ages. But what I would rather say is, instead of looking at a trend, I would say, let's focus on the market sentiment and try to understand that first. So you have to identify certain sentiments and movements in your domain. So instead of looking at it overall from a content strategy standpoint, or this is what is happening in the world of content marketing, I would rather love for people to look at the domain in which they are working, the product areas that they are working, the problems that they are trying to solve for. And this goes back to the basics, right? You have to always look at, when I said at a quarter, so in this quarter, what's happening? For example, if people are not spending that much, or if people are trying to consolidate, you message your theme around that. So identify what's happening right now, and then see that, okay, what's really the thought process behind this? Why are people doing this? It is something like your jobs to be done. If you're thinking about it from the perspective of this led to this, it's not what you see on the surface. Many a times somebody might say that, I don't have a budget for this. But I don't have a budget for this doesn't mean that they have no money for this. It just means that it's not a priority for them to spend on this right now. So you understand, okay, why is this not a priority? Then you hear more. So I'll give you an example that I really love. You might have heard of this chocolate bar called Snickers, right? So what happened with Snickers was, it previously was competing with the Milky Way bar. But when they realized why people are buying Snickers for, in the airports, for example, when people are running from one tunnel to the other very quickly, one terminal to the other, they realized that people are buying these Snickers in the airport because it satiated their hunger for a longer run. If their flight, if they're not going to get anything to eat for the next 3-4 hours, this helped them. Now, once they realized that this is how people are using Snickers, they came up with this campaign, the hunger campaign, saying that if you're hungry, you're not yourself. right? So your entire messaging comes from having your ears to the ground. If
Mm.
I'm thinking that, hey, as a content person, what is that I'm going to say, or what are the different places that I'm going to place this, that's all later. You have to understand who is it for, why is it for, why is it relevant right now, what does it really mean to people, and then map back to that. Maybe it's a long-winded answer, it's not a straightforward trend, but this is how I see it.
Yep. So listen more, see more, and that is where you'll know
Yeah,
what to do
yeah,
rather than if
yeah,
looking at what trends are
yeah.
upcoming.
It's like meditation. Be aware.
Be aware. Well, Yag, this has been fascinating. A lot of good stuff in there, and I hope anybody who's listening has got some clarity of how to look at content and how to look at a content strategy. But it's been wonderful having you here, and thanks again for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Deepak. It's been wonderful. Great questions. I love the back and forth things as well. Lovely, and thank you for giving me the space to rant out whatever I had.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Yag.
Thank you.